Morning, marvellous. In this video, I'm driving an Cambridge. No, sorry. In this video, I'm driving a 1969 Peugeot 404. So yes, you could be forgiven for thinking I'm driving an Cambridge or maybe a Lancia Flaminia because one Pininfarina is behind the styling of all of these cars, and frankly he got lazy and recycled the design. But no, this is the Peugeot 404 of 1960, though this is a 1969 model, and it was Peugeot's follow-up to the 203 and 403, which had really established Peugeot as a manufacturer of very robust, ideal family cars. If we get round the back, the styling is much more Lancia Flaminia than Cambridge or Oxford, especially this treatment of the the trim going around the rear window. It really is very similar to some other cars, but under the skin things get a lot more interesting. It's easy to overlook the Peugeot 404 because it had the unenviable job of being a rival to the Citroen DS, which of course was a car that was super futuristic in looks. It was massively advanced under the skin, but the thing is, the 404 is also very interesting under the skin, but we'll get to that in a moment. The 404 began life, like I say, in 1960. Very early on there was an option of Kugelfischer, I think that's the right pronunciation, fuel injection, though most cars, including this one, used a carburettor. Remarkably robust design. The car won the East Africa Safari Rally 3 times, I think, or possibly even 4 times. And this is a time when you do your rallying in cars that were close to stock. There won't be very much in the way of upgrades. They really were that robust, which was proven because after French production ended in 1975, production of this car continued around the world, in Africa and in Argentina for a number of years afterwards. In total, go away fly, they produced 1.8 million of these in France and another million elsewhere in the world. It was a car that sold exceedingly well. This example was assembled as a knockdown kit, completely knockdown kit, here in Australia. And I think that probably explains why I think the colour is a unique Australian colour. I think something like 86,000 were assembled here, which is a remarkable number for a car that you probably didn't really know existed not all that long ago. They also assembled them in New Zealand and, like I say, Argentina, Nigeria. They were built all over the blooming place. But I think we should start having a look around this car, and I'm going to start under the bonnet. Right, the latch has been pulled, little safety tag under there, and a marvellous noise from these. Look at these hinges with the springs to keep it all upright. And here is the engine. It's a 1.6 litre overhead valve engine. Nothing particularly advanced about it. It is canted over to quite an extraordinary degree, and if you go and check my road test video of a Peugeot 505, you will see the same sort of slanted engine design, because that engine has a very old history. I think it's quite closely linked to this. This is an XC engine, I think is what they're referred to. One innovation we have got is this fan, which is engaged by mechanical clutch, thermosensitive. This is the viscous fan. Must be one of the first cars to have a viscous fan, certainly in Europe, so that's quite unusual. There is no inlet manifold. You'll notice the carburettor feeds straight into the side of the cylinder head, and that's because all the manifolding is done inside the cylinder head, and yeah, that's quite unusual in itself. The sump is kind of down here, so it's up out of the way because the engine's slanted over. But one difficulty they had was clearly this engine bay was designed very much for left-hand drive. So it all gets a bit tight down here, You've got steering gear and brakes and clutch all competing for space in not very much of it. Loads of space over this side, which is why the brake booster is over here. I don't think this is the correct brake booster for this car. I think this is a slightly different design. It would have been a much larger unit. But yeah, all the space in the world on left-hand drive because the engine's over this side. And the battery adds some balance down there. But I've just noticed how small the radiator is. But yeah, these engines work fine in very, very hot climates. And lovely period stickers. Good to see. Proper. Moving inside, one curiosity first of all, shared with the Wartburg I believe, is that is the door unlocked and that's locked. So you can't just, if the door's locked, you can't just get in and pull the knob up. You've got to somehow try and push it down if you're breaking into the car. I would recommend not breaking into cars myself, but the doors, a nice solid sort of a noise. And if we hop aboard, first of all we've got the seats. This one wisely has a sheepskin cover on it because black vinyl and sunshine, not ideal bedfellows. I've just noticed the seat belts appear to be out of a Renault. Shock horror. That's not good news, is it really? If we jump aboard and get rid of these blooming flies, because Australia, here is the interior. A very simple interior, and this is where things do differ somewhat from the BMC cars. This all looks a lot more modern, and it's not vastly different to how this model came out in 1960. I think this binnacle is slightly modified, effectively a facelift item, but you'll notice we've got a Jaeger clock which actually works. We've got a little speedometer here, still in miles an hour, 21,000 miles on it. I wonder how many times that has been around. Fuel gauge, I love the little jerry can, voltage and temperature, and that temperature would seem to be permanently live. The steering wheel gives a sense of age, and it's got a very good horn there. On a proper ring. Control wise, we've got indicators on a little stalk down here. It seems a little flimsy. It's almost like they've stolen it out of a 2CV. The gear change, which is a weighing up for first, that's second, that's third, and that's fourth, with reverse all the way down here. Might not go in at the moment, probably wants to go into first. There we go, that's reverse. Sometimes you need to manhandle these things a little bit. We've got light controls over here, I believe. Okay, yeah, okay. So that's the headlamp flasher. How do you turn it on to the various settings, I wonder? You know, I don't know. We'll come to that. Maybe this switch is involved. Oh no, that's a cigarette lighter. The owner did explain, but unfortunately he was driving along, probably flashing at other cars as he did so. So I'm not entirely sure how the light switch works, but that's clearly a flasher, and I don't know what that movement does. I shall endeavour to find out. But handbrake, remarkably similar to a Chevrolet Corvair in being quite a long way away, and very similar sculpted metal handle. But the seatbelts are static items, so that's going to be quite interesting. Ignition barrel down here, as you might expect. I would guess one of these is a trip reset, adjust the clock. Let's listen to the indicators, because that's always a good thing to do. Oh yes. Oh, I would suggest we've got a bulb out. They flashed once. Interesting. Something slightly amiss there, it would seem, on the electrics. The wiper switch is over here. Is that? Oh yes, there we go, the squirty. We've only got squirty on one side, but still, that's better than nothing. And oh, look at that for a wiper pattern. There's a good overlap, and this wiper comes all the way over here. Interestingly, I say interesting, people just invading my video. This is most annoying. But yeah, interestingly, they didn't move the wipers for left-hand drive. They preferred to have the wipers park in front of the driver back then, and I think it gives a more complete wipe effectively because the blade is down here. So yeah, Interesting that the wipers look set for right-hand drive, but actually aren't. That's how they did it for left-hand drive as well. We'll turn the ignition off before we cause the coil any great upset. But yeah, little heater controls here, quite dinky and dainty. But we've also got this lever down here, bang, which opens up fresh air ventilation. And I think that might be a heater blower switch down there. Appears to be 2-speed. Again, not the most ergonomic. And then we've got 3 pedals, as you'd expect. We've got the choke control. I believe that would have been parking lights originally, but I don't believe it's wired up. And this one's actually got a starter button wired up because there's a problem on this beautiful ignition barrel. Just taking in all the detail on that. It's just lovely. Insert key completely. Well, there we go. We must do that. Little ashtray, little glove box, actually quite deep, and fresh air ventilation to the face. Fairly unusual. And also notice no quarter lights, which makes it look a very clean design, although it gives the disadvantage that wind comes bellowing in a slightly unfriendly manner. But yeah, lots of space, lots of comfort, not much of a transmission tunnel. Well, I suppose it's fair size, but you can hop over it if you wish to get friendly with your passenger. The French are always thinking ahead. In the rear, sadly, headroom is a little tight. That's a bit disappointing, but maybe if you want to carry people, you would go for the Familial 7-seater state. But good amount of knees alert space here, and we've even got a little armrest. That's fairly luxurious for an ordinary family car. Inertia reel seatbelts have been fitted by the owner as a sensible mod. Into the boot. That's quite difficult to do one-handed. The boot, oh, there we go. Again, big old springs to hold it open. Very large space, actually. You can get a couple of bodies in there quite handily, I reckon. We've even got a little boot light built in, same bulb as the tail light of a 2CV. So you can see the rear axle robs some space. Very long travel suspension on these cars. But we've even got this, rather delightfully, is the original toolkit. And yeah, just beautiful. Made in France. They even imported the toolkit. And oh, some very nice grips there. They're quite nice. So yeah, lovely to have these original features. I don't think this car has had too many owners. It has been painted. The paint had suffered somewhat in the sunshine here. Whoa, bang. But yeah, lovely car. We should probably take it for a drive. Actually, before we go for a drive, there is more I need to discuss in terms of the specification of this car to show just how far ahead it is of its similar looking BMC brethren. For a start, we've got disc brakes at the front, which they never had on the BMCs. They were drum brake until the end in 1971. We've also got coil springs all around. Coil springs offer much more comfort than those bouncy semi-elliptics. But if we come under the rear, things get a little more interesting, because you see this unusual rear axle with this unit sort of stuck on at the bottom, and that's because there is a torque tube between the engine and the gearbox. So the prop shaft is contained within, and the torque tube takes all the stresses of the axle and the gearbox sort of bouncing around as you drive down the road. But more than that, there is a worm drive. That's what's in that bottom unit, a worm drive to transmit drive to the rear axle and take it out to the springs, to the wheels. You can also see a stabilizing tube, anti-roll bar. That is very unusual to have an anti-roll bar on the rear of a car in this era, as well as the front. They were starting to find favour in the front of cars, but still quite unusual, and should mean the handling is really rather good, which we shall test. This is a rally winner after all, so it should be fine. One other point I just need to discuss is these are mountings for a roof rack. So the 404s, 203s and 403s all came with those. But nonetheless, we shall proceed with the business of road testing. Now I've remembered to mention that bit. Right, are we ready? Let's go. I shall put on my seatbelt, which is a static item, and I can't do it too tightly or I won't be able to reach the handbrake, but nonetheless that does need to be a little tighter or it's just going to fall off my shoulder and be generally quite annoying. So there we go, let's adjust that, pull that down, still just about reach the handbrake. Ignition on, start the engine, settles down very quietly. I can't remember the power output of this engine, but it's quite impressive, I reckon, for the age of car. Just trying to tighten this seatbelt to stop it falling off my blooming shoulder. So sorry for microphone noises as I did that. Ever professional here at Hubner. Handbrake is off. That's about as far as I can reach, so I won't be touching that again, but that does mean I can tighten the seatbelt a little more to try and stop it just falling off my shoulder. This is not an ideal seatbelt. I do not like static belts. So it's away and up for first, handbrake is off, and away we go. It's a very sweet engine. It sounds absolutely lovely. So this is the first for me. I've driven the car very slightly around that car park, so this really is my first impressions. But interestingly, I recently drove a Wolseley 2480, Australia's unique 6-cylinder take on the small BMC Farinas. So I really do have very recent experience of what those cars are like to drive. Let's try for third. Oh yeah, he said third's a bit of a tricky one to get used to, but there we go, we found it. Quite an old linkage, could perhaps benefit from being upgraded. Let's give the brakes a shove. Oh yeah, there they are. So stopping power is assured, I would say, even if it does feel like there's a slight delay in the servo's efficiency. I assume the the indicators seem to flash when they feel like it. I suppose that's a certain amount French. Self-cancelling indicators. Oh, there we go. We've got our way around the gearbox. It's not a bad little change, actually. And I don't know if you can pick up how well she seems to accelerate, just cleanly, effortlessly. Very torquey engines. And so, although the outright power isn't that substantial, it feels sprightly in a way that Wolseley really did not. And that had a 2.4 litre 6-cylinder engine. You have to wonder about the Brits sometimes, don't you? Self-cancelling indicator is a little too self-cancelling. The gear lever is really taking some getting used to, because I also drove a Citroen DS recently, which has an opposite pattern. But yeah, you sit quite high up, so although the body isn't rolling much in the bends there, just did the window up to try and reduce noise. Yeah, you kind of feel a bit tall, a bit upright. There we go, we're at the speed limit of 100 kilometers an hour. It's revvy, but the engine feels very smooth and happy there, and the owner has demonstrated off camera that you can go a great deal quicker as well. I'm having to be a bit measured with my steering inputs. It's very direct rack and pinion, again very different to the steering box on the BMC Farinas. And the ride is pretty good. You're aware this isn't the smoothest road, but I'm not being jarred. I can just feel a slight ripple through the suspension. I can feel the ripples of the road surface. But overall, it feels very jolly and very capable. Whereas the BMC Farinas can often feel very breathless. Very kind of them to build a slalom here for us. But the main thing you want in a car is it to be effortless to drive, and apart from that slightly worn linkage making third gear a little tricky, yeah, it's easy, it's not overbearingly loud, even though the owner says he could add more sound deadening. Yeah, it feels good. Gosh, it's like a little rally circuit, isn't it? This feels really perky. And the engine just pulls well, whatever revs you're doing. Can you imagine what it was like competing in these cars on the East African Safari Rally? I mean, by heck, they were tough events. You'd be travelling where there weren't really any roads. So, remarkable times. It certainly feels a lot happier at speed than the BMC Farina engines. And even the DS engines were never as advanced as the rest of the car, a long way from it. And more transmission noise, I think. And this is quite peaceful, despite the fact we got separate rear axle and all that sort of nonsense. But mostly what strikes you is the comfort. It does feel, yeah, really nice supportive seats, a lovely comfortable ride, which is certainly making it feel pleasant over the bumps. Let's see what the handling's like. Oh yeah, the steering is marvellous. Oh yeah, that feels absolutely planted. Apparently the anti-roll bar at the rear can make it lift an inside wheel if you're really going for it. This isn't my car and I've really only just got into it. I'm not going to be attempting such heroics because I'm not sure that's a very heroic thing to do, really. But oh yeah, I'm liking this a lot. This is very capable. And apparently they used to race the fuel injected ones at Bathurst with a certain amount of success. Apparently they were really quite quick. And certainly I reckon this feels more sprightly than the DS, even though the DS I drove had a 1985cc engine. It's a really nice car and a massive surprise. Maybe I need to go to France and buy one. This is the problem with this job. I ended up wanting to buy every car I drive. Right, let's go for a bit of acceleration now she's warmed up. Oh, bit too much on gravel. Ah. I got it perfect off camera. That's 60. I don't think that's too shabby for a car from the 1960s. A lovely view down the bonnet. I can clearly see both front wings. Chrome strip down there. Lovely. Oh, I'm liking this a lot. Now, a bit of local history, just as an aside for something a bit different in this test. I'm near the town of Longford, and Longford used to have a racing circuit here, and we will soon be driving on it. So I hope you're ready for that. Good job we're in a car with a motorsport pedigree, really. Yeah, it feels really nice. The controls are surprisingly light, even the steering, which is entirely manual. But here we go, another series of bends. Oh. Lost third again. Oh, it just corners really nicely. Surprisingly flat for a car of this age. And then we're emerging onto the Flying Mile, part of the Longford Raceway back in the day. And this is it. Imagine motorists hurtling down here back in the day. Sadly the track is long gone, but there is still a checkered flag hotel. Happy days. I'll tell you what I love is how different this Peugeot is to the Renault 16 and the Citroen DS. That's remarkable variety when it comes to the best way of transporting a family down the road. Renault sadly never had an estate version. I guess they felt the hatchback made up for it with its clever folding rear seats. But yeah, 3 very different cars, all with 3 very different column gear changes, and some remarkable engineering. And I think that sadly the Peugeot is often overlooked because it looks like a traditional car, but there's clever engineering here and a very, very robust car. Just want to do some demonstrations. That's pulling away in second, and that's us doing about 15 miles an hour in third, and it just accelerates. It's just a lovely car to drive. And if we go back into this car park where we began this test, I can also do another demonstration with regards to the turning circle, which is really rather good. That is very tight. Oh my god, great for drifting, yo. Super. I'm going to take my seatbelt off to operate the handbrake. But what a lovely car. So that was the Peugeot 404. I'm so happy to have finally driven one, and such an interesting comparison with other cars at the time. I can definitely see why these cars were ever so popular in France. They're just perfect for it, and I can see why what's perfect in France translates well to Australia. Vast distances, not always the best roads. You need a car that's comfortable at speed and which has really sorted suspension. I mean, frankly, in a way, you could say it's quite a lot better than most of the competition, despite only having a tiny 1.6 litre engine. To an Australian, that's not even a sensible amount of milk. So yeah, a very interesting experience. I shall say, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget you can head to the Hubnut store, where you can buy all manner of goodies, mugs and stickers and t-shirts, whatnot. Go and search through previous videos if you'd like to find out what Mighty Dacia is all about. That was an adventure and a half. And I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Farewell. I've finally worked out how this light stalk works. Side lights, headlights, main beam.